Hello and welcome to the Viva Bastardo show, brought to you by the Hagerty Podcast Network. Today we have the delightful Henry Catchpole, automotive journalist, Carfection, Evo, keen cycler, apparently enjoyed walking across England for some strange reason. We talk about how I'm enraged by his driving skills. We talk about English sweets. We make all manner of English references, which would be completely lost on a lot of people. So let's get into it. This podcast is also brought to you by Inbound Motorsports. Rami, the main geezer who runs it, says a lot of you have been reaching out. Please continue to do so. He can bring in cars from anywhere, Japan, Europe, Asia, which is also Japan. He's bringing a ton of stuff. I think there's been a strange peak of interest in Mitsubishi Pajero Evolutions. I don't know why. But anyway, give Rami a call. He's the most delightful guy, and he will be able to find you the bizarre car of your dreams.
I know, but I'm just going.
The Henry Catchpole. I feel like Henry Catchpole. I feel like I should be a town crier. You are a journalist of great repute. Evo. What other? I mean, I feel like you've been on the YouTubes on the internet since I was a child in the 18th century. You were doing carts, wagons.
So, exactly. It's
before combustion engines.
Carfection is most of my stuff these days, and then, a bit of cycling occasionally.
Do you do the whole lycra?
Yes. Yeah. I started out.
You can tell what religion people are in the lycra. I've noticed.
Well,
I drive this place, a cafe called 9W, which is 45 minutes outside of the city, and it's infested on the weekends with lycra-clad gents clacking about, and then you see when you're having your sandwich, you see everything that you don't want to see when you're having a sandwich.
Exactly. A cyclist off, or road cyclist off a bicycle is like a walrus out of water or something like that. It's
That's
just,
right.
It is,
it's
the clacking
incongruous.
about things you get, they're all uncomfortable. And sort of, I mean, that must.
How long have you been doing it?
Long time. I love
Before
cycling.
It was fashionable.
Yes. Yeah, for the road cycling thing. Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
Yeah, I used to go.
You always want to like the band before they're in the charts.
Yeah, so it's been quite strange to see it, sort of, and lovely to see it.
It is interesting. In watch collecting, it's been I've noticed that old people have been collecting for years, sort of slightly enraged at the lights. It's like roaches have had the carpet lifted up, and they're sort of, "Hey, how dare you!" But I mean, it's nice if you sort of, I guess, if the hobby gets bigger, I suppose. I mean, like cars, the hobby's massive now. Was it? Was it always massive? I feel like not.
No, I don't. I don't know. I think I was a bit of an oddity at school, probably for liking cars.
But for a variety of reasons.
But, well, obviously. Yes.
The height. How tall is Henry Catchpole?
Henry Catchpole is, 195 centimetres, which is between 6'4"
What's
and
that?
6'5".
Can we get that in fathoms or leagues? 12 leagues.
Well, it's between 6'4" and 6'5", if I stand up straight as well, because I stoop terribly, having grown up in the sort of English cottage that you'd
Did you grow up in an English cottage?
Yeah.
Like thatch roof?
No, it didn't have thatch roof, actually, but...
were you a small child, like a little street urchin in the countryside?
Yes. Sort of, all the
coal
coal
smudge
dust
face,
on the face, set up the chimneys, that sort of thing. Yes, very much
That's
so.
right.
Yes, yeah.
What
penny for him, mister? Sort of,
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, excuse me. Nick the orange out of the back pocket. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yes, obviously. But no. Sorry.
People at school didn't like cars.
I don't remember them liking cars particularly. Sort of.
Do you remember the first car you liked? Or was it with your dad's, like MG or something?
No, I loved Ferraris, mostly because they were red. Favourite colour.
Really? Oh.
Red.
I've got a pathological rage.
I know you have.
Against,
but when you, and I wouldn't have a red Ferrari now if I came into the.
So do you remember the very first Ferrari you liked?
So I used to collect model Ferraris when I was little,
okay.
And I think the first one I remember buying or getting was a 1/18 scale polystill of a 288 GTO, which is
start.
Just sort of.
You know what I curiously like now is the Mondial. Is that weird?
Yes.
Should I get out?
Obviously.
Get out.
No, you can't get out. You can't get out of your own podcast.
Well, you can't send me away. I can stand in the corner for an awkward couple of minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like a silver coupe, the last one.
Okay.
I find is a nicely balanced car. I mean, just design-wise, I don't know anything about the driving.
And I think that's it, isn't it? That's the red thing, because instinctively think of a Mondial in red.
And it's rubbish in red.
And it's, doesn't work. Silver. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, you've got a point. Yeah, I can see
And
that
you
now.
know, actually, I saw a black GTO on Instagram as I was doom scrolling. And I feel like a lot of the cars Ferrari only made in red look actually the worst in red.
Yeah.
Like the 288, the F40, the F50. I'm not massively, I'm sort of, I don't know. It's a bit weird.
Yes.
But then I've got the Gtr.
Exactly.
You're the only person I feel like of all the people. I was like, hey, I got a Gtr. You're the only person who didn't go, what?
Tell me it's the one with the BMW engine.
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing answer. So, red Ferraris.
Yeah, red Ferraris.
Actually, you know what? I feel like the first car when I was growing up, I remember here, 928s and BMW 635s. And then occasionally I remember seeing Renault 5 Turbo 2, which, But the first car, for some reason, I put on my wall was, it was from a Time magazine ad. It was a what was that? Chevrolet, not the the Camaro. In red from the mid-'80s. It's such an ignoble and ignominious way to sort of announce that you like cars by putting that car. But it was exotic for me because it was an American car. You didn't see that here.
Fair enough.
It's like when you see people, like if you see someone, what's it like when you see someone driving a Corvette or something around? Is it good or? I can tell. You know what? Your poker face is extraordinary. It's not a good thing in England. Is it not a good thing?
No, I think it's. I don't know. I think it's. It shows your interest. You've gone down a different route, and
right.
The Z06 is a great thing. I once did do you know the Three Peaks Challenge?
I know nothing.
So, come on.
Just no. I know only useless stuff. I don't know useful things.
So the Three Peaks Challenge is where you have to do the highest peak in Scotland, England, and Wales. So Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, and Snowdon. Within 24 hours.
Is this a climbing? Is this bicycling?
No,
cars?
so sort of walking, really.
Oh, I see.
Walking,
it's a brisk.
running,
It's a constitutional.
It's a stroll. Yes.
Yeah. You have a large lunch and then you go for a constitutional.
You amble up these
okay.
and down again, and obviously you have to get between them. And so Oliver Gavin, the Le Mans driver, and I did this in a Corvette Z06. It's one of those stupid things I've ever done.
I like to drive. I wish I could drop in Le Mans driver into a story that I had.
He lives
that didn't involve like just reading a magazine.
He lives fairly near me, so we used to cycle together and stuff for him training for
how was
class
that
events and me
driving with him. That would be like me driving with you. I feel like I'd just be. Was it depressing?
No, it was great. It was just because it was really interesting because he's obviously so good at what he does and so sort of the whole endurance side of things. It was the perfect idea of a story because it's 24 hours and
real drivers are so relaxed.
Yeah,
and I'm just busy full brown trouser award situation at all times.
Yeah, they're so relaxed and so they give themselves so much time, even when you're sort of thinking, I know you've seen the traffic that stopped up ahead, but sort of if you've anticipated something sort of 3 days down the road, that is sort of going to be
their own like
fine.
biological sonar. They've they've emitted. That's right. They've got a topographical map of everything for the next 5 miles.
Exactly. So
it is interesting that. Are you like that when you drive?
No. I wrote something about it for the Intercool recently about the. I can get enjoyment from driving down the motorway just because it's that. If you're interested in driving, then it's like people watching without being able to see the people. You see that car over there, and you sort of know the way it's being driven, or the fact that it's they have rubbish brakes, so that's kind of how that's going to behave, and that's where the truck there's that blind spot on that car, and it's this massive sort of moving jigsaw that you see and going on in your head, and sort of it's the kind of your own version of the Matrix, kind of looking at it, which I think is fascinating.
I find that really interesting, man, because I was talking to the missus the other day when we were in traffic, and because when you're driving, you can always feel if someone's a nervous driver, always.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, without seeing them, just
by how they're driving,
they're on their phone clearly because they've wandered across that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's the bins are out. So there might be a bin lorry up there, and it's kind of you're driving down the road, there's a tractor, is he going to knock the branch off there? And stuff, all the weird stuff that if
So
you
you're
just,
anticipating all the disasters.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. It's that's how I
Like
get
those
through
videos
life.
you see.
It's
There's
wonder I ever
there's
leave
a
home.
bridge. You must. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a bridge in the States somewhere, and it's very low, and there's a camera, like a traffic camera or something, and there's just compendiums of videos of trucks just driving in and just decapitating themselves repeatedly on the bridges.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so yeah.
So-
I think,
God, that is interesting. I find that driving in New York is weirdly video gamey. Like, for instance, okay, it's actually it's if you're driving in New York and you indicate, it's a sign of weakness. If you want to
Yes.
signal that you want to change lanes, it's a sign of weakness, and then no one will let you in
no.
because they don't respect you. What the fuck's wrong with this guy? No, you have to elbow your way in viciously.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's all top hat, after you, sir, and all the rest of it.
But it's also this sort of bizarre thing of if somebody pulls out into a gap that, on the motorway, they're perfectly, there's a gap there.
Yeah.
They can do it. They're not causing anyone to stop particularly. But people will get very irate by the fact that they think they've done something wrong. In Italy, it's just taken as read. You filter and everybody gets on with it, and nobody bothers actually sort of beeping
that right?
that sort of thing necessarily. Yeah, on them. Yeah, it's just
So
it just carries
so you're
on.
saying
Same in
here
Morocco,
that the
you
gap
kind
the
of-
gap is seen as that space belongs to me, and you're taking up.
Yeah.
Right.
It's everybody just seems to get on with it in Italy most of the time. And
Do you think that's the best place to drive?
In some respects, but also,
I mean, you always seem to be up
Probably.
in Scotland.
yeah, I love Scotland. There's nobody up there, so it's,
I've never
It's
been
great.
up there.
ugh,
I
wonderful.
haven't been. It's funny. I mean, I feel like I'm just weirdly like a tourist in my own country. It's weird.
I
Like
love
I'll ask
Scotland,
people directions, they go, "But you're English," but I haven't lived here since 1987.
yeah, and I spent 4 years up there at university, so I'm.
Did you cycle around there too?
No, I wasn't really cycling much at university. I was doing more
Heavy
running and
drinking.
stuff then, but a heavy drink. Golf, actually. So
Really?
I was at St Andrews, so I grew up playing golf.
You
as
don't know a
well,
guy
so-
called Storm Boswick, do you?
No, I don't.
Such a
I
good
wish I
name.
did now.
I know.
It's kind
I
of
know.
bad.
It's the most amazing name. He might be a bit older than you. So, but then you've got a whole rally car thing. Is that right?
Yeah.
You
I
do you have
love-
a Mark III Ford
Mark-
Escort?
Mark II.
Mark II.
Mark II, yeah.
Have you always liked rally cars?
It was so. My parents were more into. I remember them watching Formula One.
Right. Was that on Sundays?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that
obviously.
show called?
It was
Program?
Grandstand.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So, and which is probably where the whole Ferrari thing came from. Because I remember wandering in and sort of age whatever, and which cars are winning, and
Right,
or
it was
it's the
always
red, it's the
Ferrari.
red ones. Which ones
Right.
are they? Ferraris. Oh, right.
Right.
So red Ferrari, etc. Goes from there. But I remember the amazing shot of Toyota Celica, it's ST185, jumping somewhere in Africa in the sort of the Castrol livery and stuff, and
Right.
and watching that, and that must have been on Grandstand as well, or,
Sure.
or something like that, and thinking this is phenomenal. This is a whole other level of
Have you done?
motorsport.
Well, you've
Cool.
done clearly must have done a lot of rally driving then.
Not a lot, but I did the British Championship in 2008.
As one does.
So it's such of all the things to be able to blag through motoring journalism, that was the luckiest thing ever, really. It was one email sort of late at night, I can remember, because I wanted to. Everybody else did racing at Evo,
Right.
and they'd all done the Caterham Academy and things like that, the sort of the first rung on motorsport ladder, and I wanted to do some sort of motorsport, and I thought, well, I'll go and do rallying because that's different. There's a different angle there.
When was this?
2007, 8. When was it?
Okay, so this is really before the whole like Group B fever took off and all the rest of it. Okay.
And it was, and I thought, well, I'll go and do the 205 challenge, Peugeot 205 challenge.
That's a glory. I have a friend who's, I mean, they're just the most, I've never driven one, but I have a friend who has two, and he just the best car on the planet, according to him.
I once drove one around Wembley Stadium, but that's another story.
I'm sure you've got endless stories.
And anyway, I was trying to do that, and I thought, well, and then this email popped in saying the Suzuki Swift Challenge was starting next year, and it was meant to be the first sort of rung on the rallying ladder. I thought, this sounds absolutely perfect. So I sent off an email, sort of, this is why I think it'd be great for it to feature an Evo every month, and sort of I'll go and do all
Right.
this, and they're never going to say yes to that. got back the next morning. There's an email. Well, sounds very interesting. Yes, I think. But it turned out you needed an international license to do this. It wasn't really the first rung on the ladder at all. So I went and bought a 205 and then trailered that around the countryside, doing all sorts of random rallies. And
after the debacle, the disaster of my tarmac racing school, the missus was like, "Okay, what about rallying?" So what and so she gave me this. It was a 5-day class. It was called Team O'Neill, I think, in New Hampshire or something, and I really loved that because I loved the idea that the thing I found. First of all, you're not going I wasn't going massively quickly, but I like the idea of the controlling the car, like and the way the road. Every time we went round, you go down the same sort of roads and stuff, but they would be different every time because the gravel would have moved, or there'd be some snow, or it'd be wet, or this, that, the other. But I loved this. The way in which the left foot braking and you could tuck the nose in, and all this kind of stuff was revelation to me. And it was so exciting to be able and learning to do the finish flick or the whatever it's called. It was just I don't know, I felt like maybe I had like 2% of talent for that versus negative talent for tarmac racing.
Yeah, I've done a couple of races, but I never really felt like I was particularly.
Do you get the red mist?
Good. No, I think that's half the problem, really.
Are you not a red misty kind of person?
Do I strike you as the red misty?
No. Because I have a friend, this friend of mine, the Nut King in America. We go driving and he gets red mist, but he's a really good driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't seem super red misty.
No, not really. And it just, I think the racing thing, I don't have that ability to sort of put in the metronomic times and sort of nibble away at the final sort of half tenth or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly right. That was the thing I found slightly tedious about tarmac racing is you were shaving. It was very.
You're trying to do the same thing again and again.
Yeah, it was very Swiss in a weird way.
Whereas the rallying, it was just a big adventure, and the driving on public roads, obviously shut public roads, but is amazing. Sort of going through a village as fast as you can with somebody next to you telling you.
And do you have all the people on the roads doing the whole thing?
You'd have the sort of people sitting on
those videos are. I'm sure you've seen the videos.
No, you don't have quite the Group B. So
you know what I mean?
Nobody was queuing up to see
Catchpole in the red mist.
See 118 brake horsepower Suzuki Swift sort of
going around a roundabout.
It's not really.
Those are amazing. The videos of the Group B stuff in the 80s. Though I mean,
it's just so I got to drive. Audi Quattro S1E2, so the ultimate, really sort of almost expression of Group B.
Yeah. I would actually say it's a Delta S4 as an ex-owner. I'd like to push back.
Yes, no, fair enough. I'll happily take that.
What was that like?
It was everything you think it's going to be in terms of just being utterly insane. The way the boost would come in, because it's almost spookily similar to an F40 in terms of when you look at the figures, but it's just got this one big turbo. So everyone talks about an F40 and the sort of the way the power comes in at 4,000 RPM and sort of this big hit. Well, that, but even higher up, kind of, and with a bigger bang, basically.
So is it nothing and Millennium Falcon?
Yeah. And
but when the boost is coming on, though, is it predictable? Or it must, a certain
exactly.
RP. And can you feel? Because I found with a lot of the 80s, I never liked turbo cars. I never owned turbo cars, and then all of a sudden, I just owned only turbo cars in the 80s and 90s. And I find that you can. It's sort of like the only analogy I can make.
You're going to do the sex thing again, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a sex thing. Yeah. It is. It's like when you're about, like you're having a go, shall we say, as it were. You have it, and then you're like, oh, it's gonna. Unless you're 16, when you're just like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. But if you're an older gentleman,
this is now an awkward first date, by the way.
This is.
Fine, yeah,
I'm just making the awkward first date even, much more awkward. But like you can sort of feel the finish arriving, as it were. I'm trying to put in Victorian time. Do you know what I mean, though? Does that make any sense at all?
Of course it does.
Yeah. So
and
it's not, because I think people often think of 80s or 90s turbos as you don't know when it's going to happen. It just suddenly, it's like someone just comes in the room and switches on the light. You're like, hey, I was sleeping.
No, but that's the point of lag or latency or whatever you want to call it. It's all there. You're waiting for it, and it's the anticipation of this, explosion of the turbos or turbo. But yeah, it's just this incredibly raw thing, the Audi, and you can't you have to plan so far ahead because this thing just sort of goes off down the road and seems, you can't be afraid of it.
Right.
Like so many competition cars, you have to be in control of it.
Right.
Not let it drive you.
I would be fully afraid.
But the idea of trying to, I drove it on a sort of small bit of sort of airfield circuit, so there was a decent amount of room, so you kind of
For
when
error.
the thing starts, basically, absolutely.
Right.
'Cause, I mean, this
You
is
could deploy the chute in the back and go on.
yeah, and it's the most probably the most famous or most important of the Quattros that's left in a way, and it was so you don't want to get it wrong
Right.
at all.
Right.
But equally, you want to drive it hard because you want to know what it's like. There's no
Right.
point just going, I've driven it, but
Right.
like kind of 4 miles an hour. You want to know what it's like. But yeah, it's everything you think it's going to be. And the idea of doing it down a narrow piece of road with the people there and trying to think 6 corners ahead.
I mean, I've got when you see those videos. I've never been in a real a real Group B. I mean, I've had a bunch of them, but not like the race cars. But I have nothing but admiration because it's for the people who drove them in period. Because, like you say, I mean, when I had the 037 was actually really manageable. The T16 was, I thought, faster than the Delta S4, but the Delta S4 was like driving around in Satan's anus. It was just because the noise of it all and but that was twin turbo. That was twin charged.
Yeah,
so there wasn't any lag, but you could still feel the turbo kicking in a bit. But it was the noise because of course
it was supercharged and turbocharged, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then I had fitted a Group B exhaust because I always feel like the things have to sound like the way they look. You know, so it's important. Yeah. And I can only imagine what a real Group B version would have been like.
I think it's one of those things that people always want that back. They want the return of Group B. And when we had the rally cars coming back in 2017 with all the wild aero and sort of more power and stuff, and it was going to be the return of Group B, but it never can be really because the power that they had was so far ahead of the chassis,
right? That
it was just you're kind of hanging on and trying to wrestle with this power delivery because the car couldn't really cope with it. Is my view. You didn't have the damper control and all that you have now. So now you could have, as you see, like a World Rallycross car is still terrifying because of the power it's got. But
could they not make it like? Could they not? It would be kind of amazing if they tried to recreate a similar technology to Group B from the 80s, but without the aids of today.
Yeah.
As a kind. But I guess that wouldn't.
I don't know. I mean, I've always thought for a while that they should, reduce travel basically in the rally cars because you had huge amounts of travel in a World Rally car, which meant they could soak up all the.
Did they have
terrain.
less in the 80s?
Yeah, and it was just, and now they've reduced it again a bit, but it's still they're so capable. It's extraordinary. A modern rally car, what it can.
But all cars are capable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be driving.
But like rally damper technology it's spooky. It's brilliant. But I mean, once
now you're going to weapons grade nerdery shit that I know nothing about. I don't know because I'm just the buffoon who likes stuff, but I never really know what it does, how it works, if it's going to work again, like what's happening when I'm driving it. I mean, the depths of my ignorance are miraculous.
I don't believe that.
No, it's utterly true.
No,
it's utterly true.
I'm not buying it.
I know nothing about how stuff works.
That's what you'd like to believe, but
no.
It's not.
Okay, so here's an example. I had a 246 Dino. That was the first really posh car I bought 15 years ago, and it stopped when I was driving. I used to keep it in a public garage down the street from me in New York, and it stopped when I was driving around because I drive around the city, just because it was. I really loved driving it. It made me feel good. It was this beautiful thing.
You got it, drive it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it stopped on 2nd Avenue, like 52nd Street, and it was really hot. And miraculously, there was a parking spot right where, which never happens in New York. So, and because it was an old car, people were super happy to help me push it into the thing. And I called up my friend, actually the Nut King, and I said, and we were talking, and I said, and he said, "Have you checked the spark plugs?" I said, "Why would I check the spark plugs? They aren't. Isn't that what they just aren't? Don't you just use them when you start the car and it gives you the spark, and then they don't do anything anymore?" So that. My friend Henry, is that extent that my knowledge has increased slightly in the last 15 years, but it's miraculous. It's amazing. The damper thing you were talking about. I
understand what they feel like. In terms people talk about the internals of dampers, and I'm I'm lost too. Yeah,
Are you?
Talking about shims and all that.
But
sort of stuff
you talk about all that stuff when you do the reviews.
Sometimes I can kind of learn about stuff and then I forget about it again.
I find that, but all modern cars are horribly capable. Everything like a minivan is faster probably than anything I own, except for maybe the 220 now.
Yeah.
But I drive around the M1 in the city, and everything's faster than that car.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it.
No. And it is all about the feel, isn't it?
That's right.
That's the.
Is there anything modern that's interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
the Alpine.
The Alpine. Yeah.
I'd love to drive that thing.
Yeah.
What else is good? Do you think?
There's all sorts of stuff that's fun. I drove the Lamborghini Technica the other day, which is
okay, but this
that's
the
Hurricane ST. Wow, you've been attacked by the.
I almost clubbed myself in the face. But isn't that like 1 million horsepower?
It's 631 brake horsepower.
Right.
I
feel like if you could do a car that was 300 horsepower and say
1,000 kilos.
Yeah, or 2,000. I don't know what's that in pounds? I don't know.
Yeah,
12 leagues.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's the ideal for me, which was exactly what. Did you ever see when they did the DB5 for the latest Bond film?
Yeah.
And they did the stunt car for that. It was an amazing thing because it looked obviously identical to a DB5.
Yeah.
But it was carbon fiber body and it was effectively a rallycross car underneath.
Really?
And it had BMW M3 running gear in it, manual gearbox. It sounded amazing. So it was about 300 brake horsepower, weighed 1,000 kilos, proper suspension. It was brilliant. It's like the ideal formula.
That's
rear-wheel
amazing.
drive, proper diff.
Right.
Although it was weird because it still had the big steering wheel.
Right.
Which is also slightly flexy. So it was just curious. And if you've ever driven old stuff like a sort of DB5, then you kind of don't want a lot of lock generally. So you'd sort of, you wouldn't want to be throwing, because it doesn't have a huge amount of lock. Whereas this thing, you'd get in it thinking that, and then realise that actually it wanted to be driven like a Mark II Escort with a huge amount of lock thrown at it. So it was this weird sort of disconnect of...
What's his name driving that? Was it all stuntman stuff, or you don't know?
It was Mark Higgins driving that.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's...
It's not like the David Brown car. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's not like that. No.
Have you seen that in person?
I think I have.
Is it nice, or is it a horror show?
Or
you're not allowed to say that?
It's not my thing, really.
That was very nicely done, Catchpole.
Very.
You'd be amazing in the diplomatic corps.
Well, my teachers used to say that. Funny enough, it was,
your what?
My teachers at school used to say that.
Really?
I'd make a good diplomat.
God, I didn't get that.
No.
Really? I got a lot of stop disrupting the class.
Yeah. Well, I only ever turned up to class just in time. So as I said, I arrived.
Did you always have a packet full of sweets?
No.
Do you have a favourite sweet from your youth?
I used to like bullseyes.
That's very Dickensian.
Yes, I know. But
have a bullseye and run along,
exactly,
child.
Yeah, but then I grew up reading Just William, Richmond Crompton, Just William stuff.
Okay.
Violet Elizabeth Bott, Douglas Henry Ginger.
Wait, no? What happened? You went down a wormhole.
Oh, come on!
Wait, Just William. That's ring a very vague bell.
Yeah.
This is going to be completely lost on the American audience. They can have people that have no idea what we're talking about now. It's just two English people going, as far as they can hear. I was Refreshers.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Do they still sell those?
I think they must do. Yeah,
I keep going to shops everywhere asking. Yeah. For people who don't know, they're these little fizzy. I don't know why I'm looking at the camera, I guess, because it could be on YouTube. The three people watching on YouTube. Hello. It's hello everyone. They're little fizzy.
For the sake of the podcast, he waved.
That's right. Henry Catchpole is now waving. God, so.
Yeah, that humbug, obviously. Yeah, classic.
Humbug?
Yeah. Did
you only eat Dickensian sweets?
Probably, yeah.
What else, like Turkish Delight?
No, I couldn't stand Turkish Delight. Weird.
I feel like those are all those things. I feel like they only ate those in C.S. Lewis books.
It was sort of, and then gobstoppers and things.
That's
like
right.
Yeah. But Just William always, it was half crown or sixpence worth of bullseyes. And
wait,
so
sixpence?
In the book.
In the book. I thought you.
So when I was, no, not when I was. So
your youth in the 19th century.
Exactly. Yeah, 2 shillings to 6 pence.
That's right.
Yeah, no,
the topper.
Quite. Yes, we're back on there again.
That's
yes,
right.
Exactly. Yes, I do own a top hat though. So
do you?
So, yes, my grandfather's.
Are you also a watch geezer, or tangentially? Marginally.
Yeah. I've gone down that whole rabbit hole in the last sort of couple of years.
Have you?
Yeah.
What started it? What triggered it?
I don't know. I've always loved watches, but
Have
but
you?
never or liked. Yeah, I remember liking watches. I'll tell you the one I bought recently. I bought.
Oh, let's hear it. Let's have it, Catchpole.
I bought. I should show you a picture. But
we could. What is it?
It's okay. I'm going to show you a picture. Just see what I just want to see what your reaction is.
Yeah.
To this.
Reaction shot. Toledano reacts to Catchpole's watch.
Yes. Here we go.
It'll be all over. It'll be a meme.
Watches, yeah. So here you go.
Let me see if I can see it with my moly eyes. Wait a minute.
That isn't. I can guarantee that's not what you were expecting.
Holy shit. Okay, well, you have to send me a thing. You have to send me. I didn't even know. What is that? Is that a Snap Crackle? Wait, is that the Rice Krispies geezers?
It is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look,
that's Snap Crackle and Pop.
You see the button at the bottom.
So
is that a digital? About 6 or 7. Yeah.
You had that watch
when I was about 6 or 7. Yeah.
And I
lost it at school. I remember getting it, being so proud of it, thinking this was the coolest thing.
Was that a send-off thing?
Pressed the button and it just. Yeah, I think.
Okay, so let's explain to everyone, all the listeners, all you listeners. It's a watch with the Snap, Crackle, and Pop Rice Krispies people on it. Mm-hmm. Is it digital?
It is, but it's so it's square, and you can't see the time.
Does it tell you?
So it just has. It's just a white sort of square plastic thing, you say, with a white Rice Krispies characters on it, and then in the bottom right hand corner there's a little white sort of pimple of a button. Press that, bit pops up, and that shows the time in digital on it.
That's amazing.
And then you push that back down. So every time you want to look at the time, right. I'm just gonna press that button and up it pops, and you feel.
And that's kind of amazing. So what precipitated that sort of wormhole to your youth? You just did you see something and you were like, oh, that watch?
I don't know. I think once I started. So I had a Speedmaster, which I was given as a wedding present by my wife, which is the watch I'd always wanted. And then I was at Braemont, and then my grandfather on my maternal side had a Vacheron and Constantin watch, which I'd done some sort of research into. It's a 1943 steel.
Oh, really?
4072.
I don't know what that is, but 1943 steel sounds amazing.
So it's chronograph. It's absolutely beautiful. I've always loved it, regardless of sort of before I knew anything about it or knew that it's probably quite valuable, except it's in terrible condition because my mother wore it for.
I'll make you an all cash offer.
So yeah, I just sort of you start hearing things. I listen to podcasts, and you think I just want to know more. I want to know more, and I love that kind of thing about all sorts of subjects where you're on that steep learning curve, and you just
isn't there something amazing about finding something you're interested in, and then you open the door and there's this whole landscape you've never seen before, and you're like, and then you get excited about the idea of discovering this country, this landscape.
Absolutely. So I think it's, and I'm that sort of person that I love having kind of a bit of knowledge about all sorts of things. So I wouldn't say I was, jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing, but it was very good for the schools challenge team. And
University Challenge.
No, schools challenge. So it's like the lower version of that. Just useless knowledge, which I then try and make use of in
okay, so give me a couple of. Tell me a few things, like a couple of things that you've constantly been fascinated with, like peculiar, like cul-de-sacs, as they say.
Well, there are things like actually sort of. I remember teaching myself to juggle. When I was younger, I spent most of the summer trying to teach myself to juggle. I had no use for it. I wasn't going to join the circus.
Right. Good for office parties.
I didn't think so. But yeah, I like being able to juggle, knowing how to do it, and not just like.
Do you just roll it out at times? Do you have kids?
Yeah, exactly. I do. Yes. Yeah,
so do you do with the kids?
Oh, they're not interested, obviously. But
how old are the kids?
They're very young, so they're 5 and 2.
Oh, that's glorious, man. Yeah. It's okay. So you're still a demigod to them. Everything you say is amazing, and then at like 8 on, everything you say is bullshit. I'm at the bullshit stage with my daughter. Everything's like, oh, Dad, you just don't understand, Dad. It's amazing. Okay, well, I'll tell you, here's one thing I've been interested in for years, is the Black Death.
Oh, yeah.
I like how you say it. Like it was very nice of you to sort of go along with me. Like I don't sound like a crazy person. Oh yeah, of course, Black Death. Of course,
that's entirely surprising because you are interested in death to some extent.
I am.
Well, of course you are. Yeah.
What you mean? Oh, you mean in terms of that project? Are you talking about the project?
Yeah,
I
well,
did?
various projects you've done.
Well,
kind of.
That's you're right. Actually, you're right. But I don't know. But you know what interested me most about the
You've conceived how you might end basically
several
times. Yeah, in over a 3-year project. You thought about this and sort of you took photos of yourself potentially. Yeah.
No, I didn't know you were aware of all the bits and pieces.
I did art history at university, so of course I'm.
Henry's talking about a project I did called Maybe, which I sort of envision all the worst possible ways my life might go for the next 30 or 40 years. But which when I say
I love the fact that you went to fortune tellers and stuff to sort of try and find out how you might.
Well, because because the thing about photography is you take a picture and it's the past. So this was about the future. So how do you research the future? So fortune tellers, tarot card readers, numerologists, DNA tests, all these things sort of give you a glimpse of what may be. I'll tell you actually what's interesting, and I just thought about this the other day. 3 separate fortune tellers said I would be a cult leader. And I
Look
feel
at
like
this.
well,
Here
I feel
we are.
Viva Bastardo is sort of like a very small cult.
Absolutely. There you go.
So
they were right.
Which is kind of amazing.
All those receipts you kept for them, you can chuck them away.
That's right. I can expense them now. It's amazing. But the Black Death thing, I'm going to try and explain my weird obsession.
Good.
What was interesting to me was the idea of how society changed on such a mass level, right? Like that there were these villages, towns that were emptied out. And I always wondered what it would be like to walk around and say peak Black Death was 1346-ish, like 1347, 48, 49, whenever it was, and just see these empty towns. What was that like as an experience? Okay, I haven't explained. That doesn't really. That makes me more odd.
No, I don't think so.
Thanks. That's
because you're interesting. Yeah, because it is. I loved history at school.
Me too. I'm obsessed with history.
It was. I went to university to do history actually, and then realised all the interesting bits were not what they wanted to teach.
What were the interesting bits for you?
Well, like that, like and then I suppose I was, fascinated by the sort of Second World War and Spitfires and things like that.
Of course. Did you have a similar? I mean, I feel like everyone. I'm not sure if this is a generational thing, but I feel like in England the First World War holds such significance. Does it still? Or not so much, really?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you ever look at trench watches?
Sorry?
Do you ever look at trench watches?
No, so I looked at the sort of the Dirty Dozen and stuff like that.
Okay, so if you go back to trench watches, World War I watches, and actually this will be a great wormhole. Are you taking the train home?
I am. Yes.
Okay, so it's an excellent train wormhole.
Good.
If you look at this amazing inscriptions on the back of this is such a tiny because they're specific about the day that people are leaving, the date or the division or whatever it is there, and they're just they're such I don't know, for me, because I was so interested in World War I, they're little windows into history, which is such a miserable cliche, but they're just there's something about them that's amazing.
I totally get that because I'm always fascinated driving through northern France, which I do on a relatively regular basis to go wherever else in Europe, and frequently drive past Vimy Ridge, which I remember going to on a school trip. And I remember the history master I really liked, who was great, brought the whole thing alive, which is part of the reason I wanted to do at university, that sort of thing. And he walked onto the coach and said, I can't join you today, but you'll be fascinated by what you're going to see. He said, here's one thing to bear in mind. He said, the final word of most soldiers as they died is recorded as being mother.
That's right. Yeah.
And then got off the coach, and you
That's
just
amazing.
Stunned all these 15-year-old boys. Actually, sort of probably everyone else carried on throwing paper and eating.
That's amazing, though.
Whatever it was, but it stuck with me. It just absolutely pinned me to the seat, and I was sort of thinking, right, okay, that's just brings the whole thing alive. Have
you visited World War I battlefields?
Yes, yeah. So
I've never been to any of that stuff. What's that like?
So Vimy Ridge is
right.
Is well,
but do they have the? Because some of them have the, some have trenches still, don't they? Or or they kind of recreated, or they're
trenches and that sort of thing. And it's just to drive through that landscape, and it's so bleak now. Anywhere else, they still dig up ordnance every year. There's an amazing group of people who go around and have to collect all the old ordnance that gets dug up by the farmers still each year.
Like a military
yeah,
division or
yeah,
something.
So
Really?
just go around, and there'll be a flag at the corner of the field and stuff. It's in a lot of it in Belgium around Ypres, because
Right.
I reported on Ypres rally a few years ago, and then sort of and everywhere you go, you cannot help but obviously see all the war graves. And
That's
stuff
so
there.
interesting. Because I've never seen any of it.
It's well worth.
I'd
worth
love to
going.
though.
It's
I watch endless amounts of that stuff on YouTube. Oddly enough, like the people go around looking for relics and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And then I just love. There's so many YouTubers. YouTube is just peppered with wormholes to disappear down.
absolutely, yeah.
Do you have a couple of YouTube wormhole things that you'd recommend?
Oh, coffee. I mean,
Coffee?
So
Are you a coffee person?
I've just been to the other side of London to go to a specific coffee shop before I came here.
Really?
Because I looked at it and I thought, I've got time, so I haven't.
Oh, this is amazing. So
yeah,
what about coffee? Okay, I've never had a cup of coffee my entire life.
Really?
Never.
So
I've had a sip, but I've never had like I love the smell of the beans, but I don't like the.
Yeah. I remember walking out Guildford High Street, and there's coffee importers about 2/3 of the way up the high street, and as you walk past up the cobbled high street, you always smell the
Right.
coffee, and I remember loving that smell. But I never drank coffee until about 10 years ago, probably.
So now you're obsessed.
But yeah, now I absolutely.
So what's with
It's like the watches. Another thing, I've just disappeared down that.
This is
that
genius, man. So what's with the coffee shop on the other side of town? Then? What's so special about that one?
So I've got various coffee shops near me that serve really good coffee, which has helped sort of feed that whole sort of understand it, and they change the beans all the time, so you get to experience them from all different parts of the world and stuff. But then I love just looking up and finding good specialty coffee shops, like wherever I'm going, because it's quite a nice detour. Otherwise, there's always that temptation of just, right, I've got to get from A to B, and you go straight there. But why not just sort of make a small detour rather than stopping at the services? Oh, there's a good coffee shop in there for an extra. Leave yourself an extra.
So what
20
on
minutes.
YouTube is there about? I mean, I'm sure there's I'm sure there's endless. So what's on YouTube that's?
So there's a chap called James Hoffman. He's again, he's now got loads of subscribers on there, and he's absolutely brilliant. He was world barista champion.
So what does he just review, like
ago.
beans?
So he actually owns a coffee shop in London called Proof Rock, and also owns a roasters.
Is that what's that from? That's a book. Isn't it Proof Rock? A character in a book?
I think it might be. Yeah.
James Joyce, maybe?
Oh, maybe. Yes. Yeah.
I can't believe I remember that.
It's very good.
I'll be corrected shortly.
Very impressive.
It is for my
absolutely.
geezery brain. It's shocking. Okay, so so he talks about like beans.
Yeah, so everything from like, comparing stupidly expensive coffee bean grinders.
Do you have a whole situation at home? Is there a situation in the Catchpole residence?
There is. I don't quite have the money for that kind of level of fascination. I've got a really good coffee shop near me as well, because.
Is this like
nice,
tube
so
amps? I didn't even realise.
Sorry, is it
like tube amps, I didn't realise that like the devices to make the stuff makes a difference.
Yeah. And I will now take my own. There's a device called an AeroPress, which is nice and portable, and a portable sort of coffee grinder and stuff. So I'll take that away with me. It's why, like, because you're going to have a kettle probably in the hotel room. However bad the hotel, you'll probably have a kettle in there. And you've got the rest of the stuff. You can make yourself coffee stupidly early in the morning, and then
this is utterly fascinating. I feel like I'm trying to think of whatever YouTube things. I spoke about this on one earlier. I was really obsessed with this guy. I think he was called Steve MRE something. He reviews military rations.
I heard you talk about it.
Yeah, so that one I liked. Then the other one, did I talk about eating with Bookie? Did I talk about that one?
You did, yes.
That one's amazing. There's a bunch of weird military ones, like there's a guy who talks about medieval stuff. I like a lot. Like he'll say, okay, he'll do these kind of tests, like, could knight's armor resist the English longbow, and all that. So I find all that. God, man, I am just such an amazing nerd. Then there's this American guy who reviews like really weird, obscure, forgotten weapons, like pistols that, for instance, this was cool. He did one the other day. I was watching one. It was a one-shot pistol that the Americans dropped. It was disposable, that the Americans dropped en masse for the French resistance in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a thing, and you just used it once, and that was it.
Seems sort of
It was not
say
pretty for
missed
firefights.
opportunity or whatever, but sort of that seems like a really kind of bad word, because if you do miss, then it's definitely become better.
I feel like it was for
you get your eye in sort of what happened to kind of marking. So you sort of
sorry.
one shot
Let me
right,
just
so
then
it's
you
now
pull out
bottom.
the other. You have a whole bunch of one shots.
Of them,
Hang on a minute. Yeah, I never thought about the missing part. That never occurred to me. See, I'm not very practical. I always imagine you go up to the the German sentry and then you use it, and then you take his gun, which is obviously multiple.
Better.
Yeah,
yes.
better than the one shot.
Luger or something, yes.
So that's interesting to me.
There we go.
I might look into the coffee thing weirdly.
Mm.
You know what I like is matcha.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like all things Japanese.
Okay. Have you been to Japan a lot?
Yeah. I went a lot in the 90s. I was working in advertising and I was doing Japanese ads in Japan.
Wow.
Which was fascinating because we had to work with a Japanese agency who secretly wanted the account, not so secretly actually. And their job was to make sure our ideas would sort of Japanify them, whatever. So, but they hated us, and so they were kind of trying to torpedo us at every opportunity. So it became this joke that I would just try and think of the most mundane situations and see if they would go, oh, that's not Japanese. So I'd be like, it's a guy and he sees a girl in the park, and like, oh, it's not Japanese. And so it was just amazing. It was amazing because they just didn't want us to succeed. But I loved. What I love about Japan is everything matters.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I've been lucky enough. I've been there 3 times with work.
Oh yeah.
And it's just such you feel so very abroad because you cannot understand.
Yeah,
anything.
It's true. There's no frame of reference for.
No.
You go to Europe. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of in the Venn diagram bit.
Yeah,
but
you can vaguely recognise the odd
right.
word, or you get the sort of. But in Japan, no, it just feels.
I like when you're getting into the train, the way they have that little area that everyone has to line up on the platform. I mean, even when you're lost, even I was there for the 50th a few years ago, and even when we're lost, there's no panic.
No,
because you just feel like it's going to be fine.
You're sort of lost anyway.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That's genius. You're pre-lost.
So I think so. But I really enjoy. It's strange because I've been so lucky to travel with the job that I do.
Sure.
But I never had the travelling bug.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I always loved.
You get sent to places you didn't know you were interested in until you're there.
Well, I was always sort of. I love going somewhere with a purpose. Right. It's a bit like traveling across London to go to a specific coffee shop. It's that sort of and then I'll have a wander around, and I love being somewhere different. But I like to have gone there not just to sort of think,
right,
why am I going to go down to St Paul's? Well, just have a wander around. No, I'll go there to find a coffee shop, and then I'll enjoy the surroundings. It's always been the case that I travel somewhere because there's a car being launched there. But then
so what were you doing what was Japan? What was that for?
It was Nissan Gtr, so the R35, the most recent.
Okay.
Most recent's been out for however long.
I wish that looked good. It just depresses me. Like I feel like so here's my list of Japanese cars. Toyota Serra.
Yes,
I like that.
So the doors from that were obviously the inspiration for the McLaren F1, and I know the exact car that gave them the inspiration for it because where I went to primary school, somebody else at school, their parents had one.
What?
And that was
really?
Gordon Murray lived near there, and that
no
sort of
shit.
Thing. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What else?
You got the Mitsubishi.
The Mitsubishi Pajero.
I drove the rival for that the other day.
Which one?
The Citroen ZX Rally Raid, Evo 2.
Wait, is that from the 90s as well?
It is, yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah. It won 5 cross-country world championships back-to-back.
Not as many as the Pajero, if I may be so bold.
Have you
driven the Pajero?
No. But I wasn't really aware of the Citroen until I drove it up the hill at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Cause it was,
did you?
Yeah.
Do you not have full brown trouser situation in front of lots of people?
Thankfully, I've been up there quite a lot these days.
It's just continuing to emasculate me. My penis is getting smaller as this conversation continues. As the blind date continues, there'll be nothing to show at the end of it.
I don't know if I say good or not. At this point.
Thank you.
But yeah, Goodwood's this. I've been going there for years because I lived not that far from it when I was growing up. So I went to the second one ever. I wasn't one of the many millions that went to the first ever Festival of Speed, because it's a bit like everybody's got a bit of the Berlin Wall and you could have rebuilt it 50 times.
Right.
It's one of those, I feel like everybody's been to the first Goodwood Festival of Speed. But I went to the second one and then went to various subsequent ones, and I used to blag rides up the hill in the passenger seat of the supercar run, because I wasn't particularly, I was quite a shy child, I wasn't particularly precocious like that, but somehow around cars,
as opposed to your explosive, voluble self.
Obviously, yes, yep. My muttering.
But your muttering, if I may be so bold, sir, your muttering has a great deal of charm. Like the thing I think about YouTube people is that there are just people I like to watch because I feel like, I enjoy this person's company. If that sounds, does that sound creepy and stalky?
No, it's why it's the James Hoffman coffee chap. He seems like the sort of person that you.
Oh, that's right.
Like to meet.
Yeah,
so it's kind of
yeah.
But
Supercars.
Good.
Anyone's in? I mean, you must have done. Was this the 90s?
Yes, yeah. So I remember sitting in the owner of Connolly Leather's XJ220.
How was that?
So that was.
You've driven one of those?
I have driven one.
What,
yes.
Okay, so
yeah, I knew you were going to ask me.
Okay. All right. So look, for me, I'll just give you my half-witted review. I've always loved just the looks of it. I think it's the most audacious and most beautiful 90s supercar. And I know I'm biased because I own one, but I just sort of feel like a lot of the other stuff, the F40, the EB110, the 959, that's all a bit 80s-ish. But what's in the 90s? What else is in there?
Well, McLaren F1.
F1. They're really lovely and beautiful in some ways, but I feel like they're incremental designs in a way, like from an aesthetic standpoint. Whereas the 220 is just sort of full spaceship.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like if all those cars drove into a parking lot, you knew nothing about brands, you didn't know what they were. To me, that you'd look at that, and that would be the most unusual of all those designs.
Probably, yes.
You can tell me I'm full of shit.
I think the F40 when it came out was.
Do you
because
think?
it was late 80s, and so it was.
But it was quite. But wedgie was not an unexplained.
But it wasn't that wedgy in the sort of the fixed rear wing.
Okay.
Maybe not. I don't know. It's sort of
okay.
Maybe, but I'm not.
But I know that
the XJ220
But I've always loved how it looks. But I remember 10 years ago, it was between that and an 037, and I just got so terrified by the size of it all. I was like, okay, 037, which I know it sounds like it's not.
I'll settle for that.
It's such a burden. Yeah, it was a terrible sacrifice. But now that I've been driving it, I do find. I mean, it is that thing where I just start laughing when the turbos come on because it's just so quick. But I find it really enjoyable to drive. Like
it's quite comfortable, isn't it?
It's really comfortable, but it doesn't feel, and I haven't taken it on small roads, so I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, comfortable in terms of it's comfortable to sit in. If you just sit in it.
How do you fit, man?
Oh well, there's a will, there's a way. I think there's an awful lot of that with.
I imagine
that, and I'm talking about go back to my height. I'm long of leg, and I stoop, and I'm short of upper body. So, and legs are good because they bend in the middle. So it's kind of
nothing eludes you. You need a medieval name like Henry Longshanks. I feel
good. Yeah,
Has no one ever?
No one's called me lots of things, but
no Henry Longshanks.
No Longshanks. No.
See, it's my gift to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So hang on. Okay, so that's my miserable.
I love that now. Great.
It's out.
Look forward to the comments now. Yes, here we go. Bullying back at school again. Fantastic.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing, Phil. Walk
awesome.
out in a rage.
Come on the podcast. Have an insight.
Be birth of a meme. I find it's surprisingly comfortable, as you say. The seats and the driving positions are nice. The gear stick the shifter's really lovely to use. But I feel like it's probably an amazing GT car, but I haven't taken it around like tiny roads. But what's your go on? Give me the unvarnished expert opinion.
So I haven't driven one for a long. I drove that and an F40 for the first time on the same day in Wales.
Okay, I feel like that's an unfair comparison.
It probably is. Yes.
Well, actually, if you went into it saying, okay, maybe this is a GT car.
Yes, and we were doing a test on turbo, so it wasn't sort of it wasn't just comparing like with like, which is the better sports car sort of thing. It was and the 220 is, I love it because it's just it is such an event, isn't it? As you say, and the view out is intimidating. It feels big but small inside.
Right, which is like the inverse TARDIS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But not as scary as the F40 that I remember driving. I mean, it was in the wet when I drove the F40.
Oh God! Why is the F40 so much scarier?
Well, it is, and it is. I think the delivery of the F40 is scary when it comes on boost at 4,000 RPM and the rear tyres sort of just light up on a wet Welsh road. But actually, and you have to stay with it once it's spinning and it's oversteering. There's no backing out of you. You're committed.
See, this is the difference between you and me, man. I would be in the shrubbery crying, sobbing in a smashed up F40, whereas you'd be like, calmly describing the chassis, the compliant chassis, or whatever it is, all those fancy automotive journalist words.
I'm not sure there's anything calm about it, but it's so laterally stiff at the rear of the F40 that actually it's quite precise. It is okay if it's once it's oversteering,
right,
and all kind of going a bit mad. Whereas I feel like the XJ220, I wouldn't really want to go there with that.
I mean, yeah, I mean it's.
You want to find a long straight bit of road with the XJ220.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly right. With the 220, I feel like when I'm driving it and the turbos come on,
as well, doesn't it?
What's that?
It looks like that as well. It looks sleek. It looks like it's elongated.
That's right.
Designed to.
It feels it feels it. I was going to say it feels like it looks, but it kind of does feel like it looks actually. But when you are right, when you're driving, I'm looking well ahead when the turbos are coming on, and I'm just sort of tickling them gently with an ostrich feather. I'm not doing any kind of hammer situation because I'm just such a shit driver. I'm such a nervous driver. But then also I'm thinking the brakes, you really have to step on is that like that in the F40 or not?
Well, the F40 is a bit lighter as well, isn't it? So
right.
But
someone said it's not that the brakes are bad in the 220, it's just they're old school.
Mm.
The thing about the 220 I think is confusing to people is because it looks so kind of sleek and lovely that you think that somehow that's what the driving experience will be like, when in fact it's just, to me it feels I haven't had as much, it feels very race car-y, like it's kind of just crude.
Mm. Well, and then you drive the XJR15, which is obviously the sort of.
I was going to buy one of those.
Were you?
Yeah, years ago. I remember. Well, they were like 200 grand.
Mm.
But then I was talking to the person. And it's like, oh, you got to wear the headphones, straight cut gear. I thought, fuck, it just seems like too for the king of nervousness.
You really do need to wear the headphones.
Right.
I drove one earlier this year for the first time.
What's that like?
Ever. I drove it in the wet. Around Castle
I think
Combe.
there's a video, isn't there?
Is, yes.
I think I saw that.
And it was. I'm not gonna lie, it was one of those ones.
And you were just blathering away all calmly.
No, not. I
but at least outside,
was not calm.
Outside it looked very calm.
Well, perhaps I have some sort of professionalism about me.
Yeah.
Because when they took it off the trailer and it was bucketing with rain and this thing, and when you hear it sort of coughing, trying to start, and I'm thinking. I'd watched everything, read everything about it, and everyone's saying.
So, what makes you when it's starting up? What makes you think when it's starting up, it's going to be
the sound of it. It sounds like a race car, sort of, and you can and driving an owner's car. I mean, the owner came down. It was
they're
really
watching.
Lovely chap actually, so it was fine, which made the whole thing much better because when they're encouraging and saying it's fine, don't worry about it, and I think it's leaking oil. That's don't worry about it. It's massive.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just to make the place even slipperier. Then it comes spinning on your own oil. That's great. But it was. It just looked. The whole situation is just like, this is terrifying, and I'm not really sure I want to get into this, let alone sort of.
So have you ever? I mean. At that point, you can't really sort of go, actually, you know what? Your car terrifies me, sir. I'm just going to go home in my Allegro.
You just got to get on with it.
Right.
And hope that
I would have totally it had invented IBS or something. Said, look, I'm having an explosive moment.
I was just hoping it wasn't going to start. I was hoping the car was going to be on my side. Well, just go, it's not starting. What a shame.
Such a shame. No need to try again.
I was going to be back on the M4 before anyone had kind of sort of gone, where's Henry?
Right, okay, bye.
Yeah, exactly. But it does. But so when the first time I drove it was to do those pieces to camera because it was raining and because it was. I said, right, we're going to have to get something in the camera.
Right.
there's no messing here. It's just going to have to be my straight out reaction to this car, and here's what it is. And so I put the headphones on because we'd mic'd up there and I knew it was going to be loud. And then so I drove it for 15 minutes or whatever, did my piece to camera. Then next thing we did was what we call hands on wheels. So somebody sits next to me and does all the bits where I'm pointing to switches and steering and all that sort of stuff. Had to have the cans on again for that because obviously you want continuity.
Do they have noise cancelling, or they just it's all super old fashioned?
Exactly.
Okay, they make your ears really sweaty.
Exactly, but it seemed incredibly loud in there anyway. Right. And then the next thing we did was the passing shots. And I thought, right, well, I don't need to wear them now, so let's see what it is. Start a thing up. Bearing in mind, I've been in this car for quite some time now. I jumped out of my skin because to actually have the whole thing kind of sort of just the unfiltered sound, it was terrifying.
Really?
Yeah. And to the point where I'm so glad that I did put the headphones on because it
made it less terrifying.
Yeah, and actually made me sort of be able to think about driving it rather than just, when something's so loud that it's so discombobulating.
I'm trying to think of all the bits and pieces I've owned. I mean, maybe the Delta S4, maybe the 220 has some sort of sports exhaust thing on it, so it's very loud.
Yeah.
But I'm sure nothing...
It is just so extraordinarily loud, but brilliant for it as well.
I find the sound of cars is so important.
Yeah,
that's such a keen insight. It's a revelationary insight. I mean, the internet's gonna be buzzing.
Literally, nobody said that.
Yeah, no one's ever said that before.
No, I never thought about it.
You've never heard. It's never occurred to you. But do you know what I mean? Like that's the first thing I do when I get a car. Is I want to fuck around with the exhaust. I want to make sure it sounds good. Always.
Yeah.
And a lot of almost all the cars, like the M1, terrible exhaust, because
you want it to sound like a pro car, don't you?
Yes,
which is
because
one of the best sounding cars ever.
I mean, every time Well, I got when I first bought it, this guy who was sort of an M1 guru said, "Listen, there's an exhaust on eBay, you should buy it." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And because it sounded decent when you're on it, but really not much of anything. And then when you put it on, when I put this exhaust on, it was like a squadron of Messerschmitts. It was amazing. It was like the ME1 and like the, dive siren, junk Ju-88, whatever's all like World War II plane stuff. I mean, of course, the pro car thing is glorious. Like every time I see the video of that stuff.
I love those one make race series.
Yeah,
as well,
same.
Which obviously the XGR15 was one make race series.
Didn't they do 220? They did 220.
They did.
Yeah, they raced those.
Oh, they did do it. Yeah, but not in a one make.
No, you're right. It wasn't one make.
Because I love the idea of the one make thing.
Yeah.
So this and the XGR15 one make race series was just hilarious because they got all the dealers basically to put money in, all people bought the cars, and then they just put a load of professional racing drivers in because there was quite a big purse at the end of it. There was they did 3 races.
Did they do that to sell them?
So they did it because when Jaguar got wind of Walkinshaw building the XGR15, and they were also doing the XJ220 at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it's built by Jaguar Sport, which is a subsidiary of TWR, not to do with Jaguar.
Right.
And Jaguar were like, what are you doing? Why is this? You're building a competitor with our car. You can't do that's not, cricket.
Right.
And he said, no, that I'm just building it for this one make race series. It's sort of, it's nothing much. So he then invented this one make race series basically to justify
I didn't know that.
He was building
How fascinating.
I think that's the way around
right,
it.
Okay.
It went. It's sort of all quite murky from this, and somebody can contradict it. But that's the impression I got. And so there were these 3 races. I think Silverstone was one of them.
They only had 3 races?
Only had 3 races in this one make race series. And it was all and the car didn't really, that's where I think a lot of its sort of, the stories about its terrible handling came from. Because I didn't think it was handled terribly at all. It had really nice steering, you feel the front, it was pretty good. It wasn't utterly terrifying.
Right.
Given there's a big old lump of a V12 behind you.
Right.
But it got a lot of the reputation because as a race car it was pretty tricky because the tyres weren't really designed for it, so they go off very quickly.
Okay.
And the aero that it had didn't really
do any aero.
Kind of very much.
It was non-aero aero.
And you've got all these professional race drivers battling against each other in this one make race series. But I
as well. But I do love those. You're right, because the thing that's lovely about one make race series is it's very flat. It's kind of a democratic venture.
Yeah. And the last race was at Spa, and that was where it was $1 million purse for the winner takes all.
Right.
But they realised that because the racing drivers could all get together and have a bit of a kind of conflab about it as to who was going to win. So they said it was going to be at least 6 laps, but they didn't say how many after that. So there was no sort of, I think it was 11 laps in the end or something like that. But so they couldn't rig it because they didn't know when the finish was going to be.
Oh, that's amazing. That's genius.
Yeah.
That's an amazing bit of history.
So I thought it's just, I love the idea of that.
I love that. I love the idea that they thought all the drivers were going to get together. So like, it's 6-ish.
Yeah. Just look out for the flags.
Yeah. When the checker flag goes, then probably stop.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I sort of.
Have you ever driven? For some reason, I was telling this story the other day. I was shooting for Life Magazine years ago, and I went down to do. I think it was a combine harvester demolition derby. But then after they had a regular demolition derby, and the people I become friendly with some guys who had a bunch of cars there, and they said, "Why don't you go on, Phil, get in there?" And so I got in this like Chevy Camaro, but from this, I think it was late 60s, with these massive exhaust at the front from the top, and I did a full demolition derby, and it was amazing.
There is nothing better than driving a car around a field. Generally.
Yeah, but especially when the goal is to smash up other people.
True. Yeah.
Have you ever done one of those?
No, I've driven cars around fields a lot, but never done a demolition.
I feel like you'd enjoy it.
I probably would.
Yeah.
Given
I
like driving off road. Well, hence owning the rally car, but
right. Is there a rally car that if you could own any rally car?
Well, I feel like I ought to get mine done first.
So what's wrong with yours? You have a Mark II.
I have a Mark II Escort, which I've owned for quite a long time, over a decade now, and I've only ever done 2 rallies in it. So
what's wrong with it?
Well, it doesn't have an engine in it.
Do you want me to come and have a look?
Yeah, if you could actually. Yeah, I think it might be.
It could be the spark plugs.
Could be the spark plugs. Yeah, it might be not why it's not starting. So it has a new engine which is currently being.
Are you not afraid of stuff in there?
Afraid of
like the stuff, the motor stuff?
Oh yeah, somebody else is building it.
Do you know them? Like, can you like sometimes when a car would start to open the bonnet. And then I look at it, I go, what about...
It's a sort of Isadora Duncan style, sort of you're terrified, you're checking your tie and stuff, and so you're going to get scarfed.
No, but I just
look
at it, and I
just going to suck you in there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh wait, is that the heiress?
Yeah,
Isadora Duncan.
Yeah,
that's an amazing reference.
Scarf. There you go.
Everyone should know. Isadora Duncan. What was she wearing? She was wearing a long scarf, and what was she driving?
I don't know. I can't remember.
But she got sucked into. Yeah, the innards. No, I'm not afraid of getting sucked into the innards. When I open the bonnet because something's wrong, then I look at it, and then I think, what am I looking at? I don't know what anything does. I don't know. I wouldn't know if something was wrong unless it was smoking, maybe.
Yeah. I'm not great either on that sort of front. I can have a stab at things, but we don't need to do it that much. I haven't really grown up with cars sort of having to worry about that sort of thing a lot of the time.
Well, I guess
modern cars, they don't.
Right.
Really want you to get involved.
Yeah, because they have the nice plastic covers on them.
It's horrible, aren't they? But yeah, the Escort should be fun. I'm hoping to actually get involved with the building of the engine a little bit.
Well, so is that in progress?
Yeah. So I've got a load of parts. The head's been done.
See, look, it sounds like you know what you're talking about.
I know, it does, doesn't it? Beautiful
the intake.
Pistons and rods and stuff.
I know those bits.
Exactly, yeah. I say these words like most of my YouTube career is just sort of,
that's right. Pistons and rods, look at
say it like
amazing.
You know what you mean and kind of,
but
act confident.
But I am amazed. I find when I watch car journalists, like the way in which you people sort of describe the behavior of the car, like, you're kind of so aware of the behavior. When I'm driving a car, really, unless I've sort of gone off road or it's burst into flames, I feel like everything's fine. Like I remember I was getting the Dino worked on, and I went to pick it up, and the guy was like, "Does that sound right to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's good." And then I came back a week later, like, "Oh, 2 of the cylinders weren't firing." But to me, I was like, "Oh, it sounds amazing." So I don't have that thing where people will be like, you're driving with someone who really knows that, I feel like maybe the right bushing or control arm or something needs some. I don't know. I don't have that. It's like I'm numb, basically.
I certainly, I've been with people who start saying stuff about but I tend to drive around stuff as well. I think I don't know whether it's it'll be doing something wrong, but I kind of just assimilate and get on with it, sort of, rather than thinking.
Okay. But do you know something's going wrong?
Sometimes, but sometimes as well, because if I don't know what, sometimes it'll be the first time I've driven a car, so you don't necessarily know whether that's wrong or just the way it is.
Yeah, like the 220 does stuff, and I think, was that just 220 stuff?
Yeah. So that's interesting. Awkward. But yeah,
thanks, man. That was very reassuring. I feel great about it now. If I was you, I'd sell it immediately. Make me a lowball offer, Henry. 500 quid. Just take it. Just take it. It's making. It makes a noise when I turn the key. There's a super loud noise that starts happening.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Is it behind you?
Yeah, it's behind
awesome.
me.
No,
yeah,
just
get rid of it immediately.
Yeah. Call my man. I'll have him call. It'll be fine. It'll be off
I do like
in,
that.
In a moment.
Call my man. I'd like to use that in reality one day.
Yes.
But it's not going to happen.
You want your own Jeeves, do you?
Yeah, I'd like to have a car Jeeves. You know how you have people who have a lot of cars, they have a guy who just does all the stuff?
Mm.
So then they say, I'm going to drive it on Sunday, and it's just always ready to go.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
I'm envious of that stuff.
Yeah. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, the whole, I don't know, the car thing and knowing how they drive, I feel like I've always understood the four-wheel thing, but not in a way that I've always ridden, like I said, always ridden bicycles, but never been that confident on them. I've raced bicycles, but I don't feel like I understand the kind of mechanics of how they, or I never felt as comfortable on them, like mountain bikes and stuff. So I've got friends who are just brilliant, and I don't have that comfort on two wheels that I do on four.
Really?
Yeah. Which is
But you're so much more in control on a bicycle.
Why?
Aren't you?
Leave the thing alone, it falls over. I mean...
Well, because, I don't know, like you're providing the power so you can modulate it in a way, I guess,
yeah,
you know.
But yeah.
So wait, riding
but like
bicycle...
handling of a bicycle or something on two wheels, I don't feel like I kind of...
I can't really bike, and I tried to blow my nose the other day on a bicycle and I fell off.
Yeah, you want tissue for that.
What?
Don't blow your nose on a bicycle.
Well, I know, but I thought I could just like quickly, like in the pocket,
okay.
and you know... But my sense of balance isn't the best. I'm really a bit of a sham as a man goes.
I remember nearly falling off a bicycle there. I once rode from Land's End to John O'Groats.
As one does.
As one does.
Why don't you tell? You should probably explain what that distance is.
So it's the most southwesterly corner of mainland UK.
How many miles is that?
Most northeasterly. It's about 900 miles. So
Jesus.
So yeah, I'd only just started road cycling, but I'd walked from coast to coast across the country when I was at university, because
you've done all sorts of really unsavoury things.
I know,
Henry.
Sort of daft. That was lovely actually. It was really good, apart from the blisters. It was, and carrying a heavy pack. It was really nice. It's just very calming because you get up in the morning and all you've got to do is just walk from A to B, and there was
on your own.
Wasn't a smart foot or anything like that. No, I did it with a friend from university. He was the one that said it would be a good idea, and I was probably drunk at the time. So yes, that sounds fantastic. And he held me to it.
Like all ideas when you're drunk.
Exactly. It was great. Anyway, so I like the idea of the fact I'd walked from one side of the country to the other. So I thought, well, cycling the length of the country seems like the logical thing to do.
Why not?
Once you start cycling, that's the obvious.
How
thing
was
to
that?
Do. It's pretty dull, actually. It hurt quite a lot. Everybody said you have to do it from Cornwall to Scotland because the prevailing wind goes that way. And I thought, well, that does actually make sense.
Okay.
And of course, typically the week that I did it, the wind was blowing in the opposite direction for 5 out of the 6 days that it took. So the last day was blissful because the winds changed around. So
but
yeah, I remember nearly falling off with about 5 miles to go at about 11
hanky
o'clock
situation?
at night. Sort of, it's trying to get some food down, trying to unwrap kind of, I don't know,
sausage roll,
chocolate digestive or something like that.
You know what? That's what I haven't had. When I come back, every time I come back to England, I eat all the stuff that I used to eat when I was 7.
Yeah. So chocolate
digestive, sponge
milk or dark
cake,
chocolate?
milk.
Okay.
Yeah. Refreshers.
Refreshers, yes.
Maltesers.
Ooh, yeah.
I think on that note, I think we're running out of time here. So look, man, I just want to say thank you so much, Henry, for coming along, man. Very good sport of you to have an awkward blind date with some strange English person from America.
It's been great fun.
Thank you so much, man.